Thanks, Sarah. That's great. So welcome to this evening's session. I'm really looking forward to kind of hearing about what is a hugely important topic. And I think although there's a lot of similarities for every single one of us, there's also going to be things that are really individual to you and your business, but hopefully we can cover as much of the specifics as you need and give you the right tools to take away this evening so you can look at the risk assessing of your own businesses. I think if there's one thing that's true about all of this is that the guidance changes quite a lot, and I think it can be very difficult for businesses to keep on top of that. I know that the Chamber is finding that we're kind of caught between we're non-essential office work. We are perfectly capable, and a team is doing a fantastic job of working remotely. It's definitely not some people's top of their agenda to sit and kind of work at home, but we can do it, and I think we're very lucky that we can do that. But that means we've got a dilemma. We obviously haven't got a date yet for non-essential offices to open, and we're expecting something on Thursday from the First Minister, but it's trying to make sense of all of the phases, all of the guidance, work out what it means for your staff, try and talk to your staff and make sure they feel safe and that you take into consideration what people are looking for. It's just an enormous challenge. So I don't think this topic is ever going to go away, and it's great that we're able to bring members that can share their experience with you this evening. It's been a busy day for the Chamber. So Sarah and I started off at 8 a.m. this morning, prepping for our session. We did a webinar this morning where we launched the Chamber's new economic indicator report. So we've worked really hard with one of our members, Angus Economics, to look at the local economic data. We do a quarterly survey every quarter, as you might imagine. And this time around, we actually have approached that very differently. So the information that we gather as part of Scottish Chamber's Quarter Economic Indicator, and that's the longest running business indicator of its kind, but we always had very good response rates for that, but we didn't really do an awful lot locally with our data. So we thought this was the time to really make a push on getting lots more responses, which we did, and also to produce our own local report and do an event just to talk about those results. Never has it been more important to hear what businesses are feeling and finding and know what's going on. On the call, on the webinar this morning, we had a couple of Angus councillors who were really great actually and engaged with us, but also spotted them furiously taking notes as we presented the findings of that survey, and also the Director of City Development for Dundee City Council was there. So I think that's just absolute evidence that when you take the time to fill in one of our surveys, people are noticing what you're saying, and it's really, really important. So if you've not had a chance to have a look at that report, it should be in your inboxes. Hopefully you've all seen that late this afternoon. And if you didn't catch the webinar and you fancy having a look at it, we did Facebook Live with the session, so it's there too. So that's already reached way more than 550, nearly 600 reaches on Facebook alone. So the work that you help us do is really important, and I can't say thank you enough for all of the people that took part in that. So I think that's kind of enough for me. I just wanted to say, there's lots that we're doing, but there's always more, or there's always different things that we can do. So if you feel actually that there's something that we could do that would really help your business, then please get in touch with Sarah or I or any of our team to kind of help. I think my big takeaway from our session this morning is that we can all do an awful lot more. We're calling on government to do more, so businesses need support with their ongoing costs. Maybe we'll see some announcements tomorrow from the Chancellor about VAT. Maybe we'll see something about business costs. Local authorities can do something with the actual rates, and they can vary at local level what they do with rates, and those are powers there that we'd like to perhaps see being used. We've all been buying local, and we can all support our local businesses, and I know that lots of people do, but if businesses bought more from local businesses and we shortened the supply chain, then if we end up with some local lockdowns, which we're beginning to see, then at least you'll know that your supply is close to you, and you've got a bit of comfort there. But, let's all carry on buying local and doing that local click and collect and supporting our local independence. The next few months are going to be enormously tough for businesses, and we need to protect all these local jobs. And if you're thinking about starting a business, then the Chamber is also interested in supporting you. So we've just launched a brand new startup membership for businesses in their first year of business. So lots for existing members, lots for new members, and lots for people that are not members at all. So I'm going to get out of the way now and introduce a couple of our speakers. So it's great to have Nina and Helen on to kind of share their experiences, and there'll be time at the end for questions. So you, as Sarah said, jot things into the chat, and we'll come back on once the speakers have finished doing their bit, and we'll have a bit of a conversation and hopefully answer all those tricky questions. So Nina, I believe you're up first. So once I can hear you, I will mute and get out of your way.
I am indeed up first. Thank you very much.
Perfect.
I'm going to share my screen, she says. It always works when you're rehearsing. So, hello, good evening, everybody. Thank you for inviting me. So, as we know, hygiene and health is having a profound influence on everything that we do, and is consequently what people will look for when, for example, booking a hotel, a restaurant, any other service in the service sector. But also, it's going to be what employees are looking for on their return to work. So your operating standards for safety, security, cleanliness will be subject to new elevated expectations. It is a requirement that every business carries out a specific assessment for the risk of exposure to COVID-19 and to put in the necessary controls and monitor them to ensure that they're actually working. This needs to be recorded if you employ more than 5 people. If you don't employ 5, so 5 or less than 5, you don't actually need to record it. But you would be unwise not to record it because it's so immense that you really need to document it. The UK government has issued 5 practical steps that businesses need to take to become COVID secure, of which the first is to carry out risk assessment in line with the HSE guidance. Step 1 of the guidance is looking at who might be harmed and how, and that's about exposure. So exposure of who, how, and when they might be exposed.
Mia?
Yes.
Sorry to interrupt. I don't think your slides are moving on. We're still on the first.
Yeah, I hadn't moved on.
Oh, sorry.
I just moved on now.
I just knew what was coming next.
Okay. Okay, so there's 4 key stages to returning to work. And the first one is thinking. So it's thinking about returning to work. So thinking about your, is work permitted? So that's obviously looking at the government guidance, of which it's already been said that it's changing all the time and very difficult to find where anything is. It's thinking about who might be harmed. Is there an alternative way of doing business? So, still working from home if you can, but, do you have to use that area? Can you use a different area for what it might be you're doing? Talking to workers. Talking to workers is essential to know how their mental health is, and mental health is not necessarily negative, it's also positive. So thinking about people's well-being and who's vulnerable and understanding their concerns. Thinking about how staff are going to get to work. Is there an increased risk through the way that they come to work? Do they have to get on public transport? Is there another way that they can come to work? And also thinking about whether you need to register your business if there's been a change, for example, in food deliveries, takeaways. Is your registration of your business stating that you're doing takeaways, or do you need to change that? And maybe your license needs to be updated. So the next stage is preparation, and this is the risk assessment stage. And COVID-19 is a respiratory disease. We can't eliminate it and we can't substitute it at the moment. So through your hierarchy of controls, if you can't get rid of it, then you need to control it through engineering or administrative controls. And the provision of PPE is the last resort. And so often in all sorts of risk assessments, everybody puts PPE at the top of the list. PPE should be the last thing you're thinking of. You should be thinking about engineering controls like partitioning, the perspex screens, etc. Thinking about, maybe having somebody working from home rather than working in the office, administrative controls like the signage, etc. Those are the things that you should be thinking of first before the PPE. Every business is different. The risk assessment needs to be completed as part of your COVID-19 return to work process. And risk assessments has always been viewed as an important way to protect employees and others from harm, since the process helps to identify risks and establish best practice controls. So you should involve workers in your risk assessment process, and this is so important at this time. Involving workers so that they feel confident that you're doing the right thing, and that you're involving them with the actual assessment, and that they get buy-in to what you're actually doing. And don't forget to consider the heightened risks of any vulnerable staff or customers that might be coming to your business. Buying an off-the-shelf risk assessment from an insurance company is not going to help you. You need to look at your risk assessments yourself. But there's also other risks such as Legionella, home working. So if you do have people working from home, looking at the way that they've got their home office set up. Lifting equipment, so have your elevators and your lifts and things like that being maintained and serviced according to statutory inspections. Your work equipment, so part of the COVID risk assessment is going to look at work equipment, and is it shared, and do you have to share it, and and if you have to share it, how are you then going to clean it to make sure that it's sanitized? There's going to be fire life safety implications, because potentially you're moving stuff from one area to another, which could potentially be blocking fire escapes. And you've also got manual handling issues when you're moving equipment, so you need to think about that. You've also got first aid. You might have reduced numbers of staff. The people that were first aiders, they may no longer be working in the establishment, so you might need to have new first aiders on call and therefore trained. Cost is a big consideration. We're all talking about chemicals. You need to make sure that you've done an assessment of the chemicals that you're using. And also, COVID is a biological hazard. I don't think it's been classified yet by the HSE, but MERS and SARS was a category 3. So there will be an implication from that on a cost assessment basis. If you are going to issue PPE, then it needs to be an assessment as to why you actually need it. In addition, you've got food safety concerns. You may have changed your menus. You may need to update your HACCP, and allergens. A lot of the time people are changing menus very quickly and potentially not thinking about the allergens that might be in the food items, and that needs to be managed well as well. And there's also the security side of it. So the fact that we're potentially leaving doors open to get a through flow of air, and so increase the ventilation by having the back doors open, that might be an increased security risk. And terrorism doesn't go away, so you need to bear that in mind and make sure you consider that. And there's also the conflict resolution side of it. If you're not communicating with your customers in advance as far as possible so that they know what to expect, then you've got the potential for a risk, a conflict situation. So you want to try and keep that on the top of your mind and make sure that people are trained on it. Training, obviously, you need to prepare for training. Information, instruction, and training is critical. I spoke to a general manager recently in Amsterdam who's been trading for a while, and he said that people have just forgotten everything that they'd known, and it had gone out the window. So retraining is going to be top of your agenda, and obviously developing protocols and making sure that everybody's prepared. You also need to think about having a COVID secure, responsible person. I think some industries are mandating it. I think in the sports side of it, they're requiring that you have a COVID secure, responsible person. I think it's a very good idea. It's a kind of hygiene officer, so somebody that's helping you to monitor what's going on. And it might be by shift that somebody that you've got somebody responsible on every shift that's the kind of go-to person, that everyone can knows what that they know what they're talking about and how to implement everything. So in terms of execution, so preparing a return to work questionnaire, so it might be a questionnaire or it might be an interview, looking at your sickness reporting procedures, thinking about your infection control if there was a sickness, and what you would do in terms of quarantining the area and closing it down. Obviously, a large part of the execution is going to be around the social distancing. And you do need to remember that the recommended distance is 2 meters. It's not 1 meter. It's 2 meters. And if you can't do it, then where it's not viable, then it's permissible with mitigation to reduce it to 1 meter. But mitigation means that there's no standing, all customers need to be seated, face covering should be worn by staff, clear safe systems for ordering and payment, clear systems for safe use of toilets, screens between seatings, lots of mitigations that have to be put in place. It's not that you can just reduce it to 1 meter. And then obviously you know that there's the requirement to be able to test and trace, so contact people that have been in the establishment. In terms of infection control, you really need to kind of map out your building. So get your floor plans and think about the way that people go through the buildings, and people being customers, staff, suppliers, anybody coming into your building, map it out so that you can actually see the free flow. I can't say that word again. And then also at the same time thinking about the hand contact surfaces and the equipment and what's actually being touched, because it's movement and it's actually contact surfaces that need to be considered. Remove things that you don't need. If you don't need magazines, if you don't need soft furnishings, then remove them. And then obviously implement enhanced cleaning and disinfection measures with the approved disinfecting products for viruses. And in terms of disinfection, it needs to be to the correct contact time. Every product has a different, well, not every product, but a lot of products have different contact times. It might be 30 seconds, it might be 1 minute. So you need to make sure that you're aware of what that was. As I said, if you are issuing PPE, then you need to make sure it's part of your risk assessment. Gloves are like hands, they transmit germs, so they need to be properly used for the correct purpose for what you want them to be used for, and then taken off properly and disposed of correctly. And then obviously making sure that people are wearing face coverings where they need to. Rebuilding trust, clear, consistent, enhanced communication with staff and customers on the new norms. Discuss your risk assessment maybe with your local authority, although they're very busy, or if you've got a health and safety consultant, then contact your health and safety consultant and ask them for advice. In terms of monitoring, it's regular. You have to be reviewing your risk assessment on at least a weekly basis at the moment. As was said earlier, the government guidance is changing all the time. So you've got to keep on top of it, but you've also got to keep on top of what you're doing, what's working well, what's not working well, and amend it as necessary. You also need to think about the fact that COVID-19 is reportable under RIDDLE. So if you have an accident, or if someone's diagnosed with COVID-19 as exposure at work, or if somebody dies from COVID-19 as occupational exposure, it is reportable under RIDDLE. So you do need to make sure that you're aware of that. So check with your employees regularly to make sure they understand what they should be doing to prevent the risks. See if they've had any changes at home, maybe affecting their mental health, maybe affecting their well-being. There may be a risk of contracting coronavirus and spreading it through people that they're in contact with. And they also might have suggestions about how you can make improvements. Some of the most common EHO inspections are still carrying out, and the findings include failing to provide arrangements for monitoring, supervising and maintaining social distancing not happening, failure to introduce adequate cleaning, and in particular at busy times, and providing access to welfare facilities to allow staff to frequently wash their hands with soap and water. So those are some of the kind of common failings when an EHO goes into inspect. This is just breaking down really into the three categories. The robust social distancing, regular cleaning, and good hand and respiratory hygiene. And it's quite a good way for you to think about how you're actually controlling it. So your health risk control strategy, you might want to think about mapping it out like that. I mentioned what the mitigation measures are for the 1 meter. As I said, it's 2 meters, but if you can't actually do the 2 meters, then you can do the 1 meter, but it's with mitigation. So I was on a webinar earlier, and the lady on the call said that she'd gone to a supermarket, and one supermarket had marked out 1 meter, and the supermarket next door marked out 2 meters. It is still 1 meter, still 2 meters. Yeah, I nearly got it wrong then. Lots of people ask about toilets for some reason. I guess it's somewhere that we all go. Building occupants should ensure that any toilet facilities that are available for use by staff and guests to the building support physical distancing and good hygiene practices. Management should decide to only allow one person to use their toilet facilities at one time. So may decide to only use at one time, regardless of the number or size of the facilities available within their buildings. But that's a management decision based on your risk assessment and what works for you. Alcohol-based hand gel sanitizers should not be placed in the toilets, as this does not promote good hand washing. Toilet facilities may create additional infection control risks, and therefore management should consider how they would be able to regularly clean them when their buildings are open. So you obviously need to think about who's going there and how you're actually going to clean it. It's okay to prop open the doors to the lobby of the toilets if it's not a significant fire risk and the area is manned, and you update your fire risk assessment, it would be perfectly reasonable for you to prop open the lobby to the toilets. If that aids the flow and control, but you need to consider that from a fire safety point of view. If there's a risk, if the area is manned, is it okay? Signage should be clear. It shouldn't be confusing. And I particularly like this signage here about avoiding men and following women. But wash your hands, obey social distancing, mask up, eat and exercise well, and no unnecessarily travelling. So make sure your signage is clear and to the point, and in the right place and not too much. I started by saying that the HSE is calling on businesses to follow the 5 steps to be COVID secure. This is the statement that the HSE are recommending that you sign off to, but it obviously means that you need to have complied with everything. So once you've actually put everything in place, then you should have this displayed at your staff notice board, and also maybe for guests. Your risk assessments, if you employ more than 50 people, does need to be displayed on your website. It's displayed on your website for staff, but obviously you could also display it for customers to see. But you also might want to display your risk assessment if for other people to see, even if you don't employ 50 people. So that's all for me, I think. There are some links on my website which take you to some of the publications that I've been talking about, and other links that are not very easy to find. So you might want to have a look there. So I will now stop sharing my screen and hand you back. Oops. How do I stop sharing my screen? Thank you. Okay.
Yep, Helen, over to you.
Okay, good evening, everybody. I hope you can hear me.
Mm-hmm.
And can you see my screen?
You
Yes.
sure can, yeah.
Great, wonderful. Well, as I say, thank you very much for the invitation to be a part of this topic tonight. It's something that we have taken extremely seriously at Glamis and Glamis Castle. And tonight I'm going to go through, if I can just go on to the next slide. Oops, the daisy. 5 points to talk about how we have approached reopening the castle and the grounds. Normally at this stage we will have seen about 50,000 visitors come through the doors, but we only opened the grounds last Monday. And it's been a slow starter because I think people are wanting to ensure that there is a safety process in place. So I think everything that Nina was saying before resonates exactly with the process that we have gone through. But the 5 points that we went through, we first of all had to do an overview of the process and the timescale that was going to be conducted with reopening. We had to engage with our stakeholders, internal and external. We had to do a processing of the change through all the risk assessments that we had to look at. And the fourth one, implementing and going live. And finally, monitoring and adapting, which is a continuous and ongoing process. So tonight I'm going to go through those 5 points in a bit more detail. So some of you who might not know where Glamis Castle is, we are on the road to Forfar. We're about 25 minutes outside of Dundee, and when you get to the top of the drive, the picture on the left-hand side is what you see. So we've got a very beautiful environment. But what we have had to do to open is pretty much change everything that was put in place when we first opened the castle in 1956. And I'm actually calling you tonight from the dining room in the castle. And the castle is 648 years old, and it's never had Wi-Fi in it. It now does. So that's a big change that we've made already to Glamis Castle. But the picture on the right hand side gives you a little bit of an idea of some of the changes that we've had to make. So aligning with what Nina was saying about the test and track system and recording everybody coming in, all of the guests that we welcome now, just into the gardens at present, have to go online and register with reference to our time slots. And this is because we're only allowing so many people in at the one time. So every half an hour, starting at 10 o'clock in the morning, we're allowing 30 individuals to come onto the estate. And that's very much to support the one-way system and processes that we've put in place already. And it allows us to control and monitor. And if there is an outbreak, we have got the information ready to hand over to the Health and Safety Organisation or the government to say this is our test and track process. So social distancing, some of you may have seen, I think it was possibly somebody in Tyree, a cafe in Tyree, who started this social distancing process with the cow. We don't do that. We've got the 2 metre signs everywhere. However, I did think it was quite poignant to have that picture placed there this evening. But on the right-hand side of the screen, you can see some of the signage that we have put, I don't want to say discreetly around the castle and grounds, but we've tried to keep with the aesthetics to make people not feel encroached by the safety measures that we've had to put in. But continuously we are reminding everybody to keep their social distance. But the overview of the process, this is where it really gets into the kind of the bones and the detail of what we did. It was a 9-week process that we took, and we're still undergoing those 9 weeks of a pre and a post opening strategy. We put together a critical path, and the critical path identified many different variables. And one of the variables was making sure that we kept up to date with the government communication that was coming out daily. And we also ensured, because we're a hospitality industry, that we were aligning with our hospitality counterparts, the Scottish Tourism Alliance, ASFA, the UK hospitality industry, historic houses, and obviously the Chamber and their updates as well were very important. We wanted to make sure that we were doing everything with compliance. With that, it created task-led processes, and we divided our tasks into two processes: operational, and then obviously what the impact would be on our staff and our visitors coming in. And we were very mindful of supply chain requirements. We knew that as soon as people were going to be allowed to open, that when a date was going to be disclosed, that all companies that were going to be able to provide items such as PPE, masks and shielding equipment, even down to takeaway cups, were going to probably be quite overwhelmed. So we did take our foot off the mark quite quickly and ordered a considerable amount of equipment for takeaway and things like that, which is helping us now. With reference to the visitors and staff, as I've alluded to earlier, we put a new process in with our website to track everybody coming through. So we have got that safety measure for test and track if required. But of course, we are a business. And so the continuous monitoring of financial cost has been very important. As a hospitality business, we had to furlough a majority of our staff, and we ran a very, very skeleton staff over the time of probably about 12 weeks, which I'm very indebted to my team members who helped keep the gardens look so fantastic, and my operational staff in the castle who kept things going. However, what we had to do when we were bringing people back off furlough was make sure it was going to be a viable process for us. And it's something that we are checking not just weekly, but daily. And so it's a difficult one because not every organisation within tourism has opened, but we have wanted to support Scotland and the economy so people have things to do when they're being allowed to move around the country, and we hope that we can supply something for people to do with reference to coming to Glamis Castle. However, engagement with stakeholders, both internal and external, has been vital. Again, resonating with what Nina has said about risk assessments, we took the decision to have full disclosure of all of our processes regarding our risk assessments, and we loaded everything up onto our website. What we also did with full disclosure of our processes, we had to create many more SOPs, standard operating procedures for our team, both coming back off furlough, exiting and entering the workplace, dealing with cash, having facilities able to wash their hands continuously, putting one-way systems in for them. And also checking their psychological well-being, which has been vital throughout this process for my team to make sure that they are feeling a safe environment, but they're also not feeling overwhelmed. And of course, the feedback has been vital because we're dealing with a small community in Glamis as well, who the demographics of the community, majority of them are slightly older. So we want to make sure that they feel safe with we wanted to make sure that they felt safe with us reopening and inviting other people within the 5 mile area to visit the castle. And so we kept open dialogue, and we're continually keeping open dialogue. And I think that's been very important because dealing with local communities for any business, whether it's a local deli or whether it's a local office that's opening up, potentially inviting people into their doorstep out with that local community, it's vital to keep that communication going. So the third part was processing the change. So the topic of tonight is a guide to risk assessing your business, and we had to do a lot of risk assessments. So the 3 areas that we have had to do so far are the gardens, the castle facilities, and the outside takeaway offering. With the gardens, we had to identify a considerable amount of touch hazard points, and what we have implemented throughout the gardens are many hand sanitising locations. As I presented earlier, a couple of images of ensuring that people are keeping their social distance, and we also have team members monitoring the one-way system to make sure that there's no crossover or cross-communication of hazard points being created that way. With the castle facilities, we did decide to open our toilets. Again, we have put a one-way system in. We have not kept the doors open into the bathrooms, but we've put hand sanitizer on both sides, and then there's hand sanitizer right the way throughout all of the sinks. And what we have got is our cleaning and domestic staff on an hourly process are going around and cleaning all the toilets. So I think that's vital that we're presenting that to the general public to show a safety measure as well. And all of the staff do wear masks. Some have decided to wear the full shield. Some feel more comfortable wearing a face mask, but they do have aprons on and they've got gloves. And we had to do an SOP and a training on how they dispose of all of that. Again, as what Nina was saying, cutting down the risk and cross-contamination has been vital with that process. And the outside takeaway offering. As I alluded to, with some of the supply chain requirements we had to create, we had to ensure that the offering that we were presenting in our new menu that we had to design were in items that were sustainable. We are an environmentally sustainable organisation, and so all of the cups and all of the forks and knives and cup holders for food and everything is all sustainable. And you'd be surprised the number of companies who have gone down that route. So from a supply chain point of view, we were quite delighted we were able to be at the forefront of getting that equipment in. Going on to the fourth section, implementation and going live. With reference to being a hospitality organisation, we align with obviously what Visit Scotland and Visit Britain and the Scottish Tourism Alliance are promoting, and to have an accreditation to say that we're good to go gave us a little bit of confidence to know that we were doing the right things. We also engaged with our health and safety executive called Peninsula to make sure that all of our risk assessments and processes and standard operating procedures were correct. And I think the most important thing is that we're displaying these signs everywhere. So if somebody goes onto our website, they're able to see it. If somebody's walking around the grounds, they're able to see it. And we have full disclosure. And I think that's one of the things that if anybody's going to take a takeaway is if you're unsure of doing something, there are lots of organisations out there who can direct you to the right port of call to make sure that you've got an accreditation. But I think that gives confidence then to both your staff and also to any visitors that you might have coming into your organisation. And then the final slide I've got is monitoring and adapting. Exactly what Alison and Nina were saying earlier, this is a process that's going to be continuous. We have already changed one set of risk assessments, and we will be doing that when we bring in the castle, or when we open up the castle to our risk assessments. But I think it's vital that risk assessments are at the forefront of the process. Staff wellbeing is key, and ensuring open communication and taking the team on the reopening journey is a process that is vital for the staff to feel a part of this change and the requirements that are expected of them as well. We know that all of this is an evolving process, and assessing the risk and processing continuously the vital components to ensuring safety cannot be undermentioned. But keeping the staff on board and making sure that they understand, and sometimes that they can come up with something that management just have not seen, is vital as well. But I think what we have achieved at Glamis Castle, we're quite proud that we've achieved it. We're open. We're getting great feedback so far. We need the sun to shine. That's really important for people to want to come out. But we're here for anybody who would like to get some fresh air, who wants to have a little bit of an experience post-lockdown. And the most important thing is that we're a safe environment as well. Thank you very much for listening. I do hope that this has been very informative, but I guess it's over to question and answers now. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I've got so many notes. You know, we have a bit of a guilty thing that goes on. Who's sharing their screen? Do you mind? Helen, is it yours maybe? just still on share? There we go. No, I was just saying, so many notes, and we've got this guilty thing that we do in the chamber team, which is firing messages back and forward to those that we know are on the call. And Donna and I have been furiously going, oh, we didn't think about that. Well, what about that? Oh, and light switches outside the toilets. You know, it's just it is a real minefield, isn't it? And it's so. Thank you to you both for coming on and sharing so much valuable information. I think we're never ever going to be on top of all this, but just when you sort of think you've got a handle on it, then something else happens, and so those kind of experiences are fantastic. We have got some questions, so I think it would probably be quite useful if I just invite people that have got questions just to come in and ask them. So I might just ask Ron first, if Ron wants to unmute and just come in and ask your question.
Yeah, my question's regarding face coverings, not face masks. And I was following the First Minister's announcement last week regarding their mandatory wearing off in shops and public transport, and whether you thought they would become mandatory across other sectors.
I think it is. I think it is going to come. I think it is a respiratory disease, and we haven't got the social distancing under control. Whether we've got it under control, it's not always reasonably practical, is it? So I think face coverings are going to become more of a norm. I think it's going to be the fact that people actually feel that they're going to be protecting others. It's going to be a social decision that's going to be made, but it's all about behavioural, isn't it? People changing people's behaviour.
Thank you.
Maybe just following on from that, then, how do you think the next few days are going to come then, as people are supposed to wear them in shops and public transport and other things? Nina, do you expect that soon is going to be a case that we'll not really get into places without them?
Yes, I think it will. I think that the public transport is they are stopping you getting onto public transport now if you haven't got it. I was quite surprised actually this Monday going to the supermarket and not seeing as many masks this Monday as I had the previous Monday, which was a bit bizarre. But yeah, I think, and that's where I think this whole conflict resolution is very important. The staff training. On obviously not getting into a situation where you come across conflict, and how you actually deal with the customer in a way that you kind of talk to them in the right way, that's not going to antagonise them, but they understand that they need to do it. And I think it's going to be a very important part of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right, because I've seen, not necessarily about face coverings, but I have seen people posting things on social media, you know, having the longest rant about the person on the front desk that has kind of irritated somebody. And it's really, you know, the people on our customer service people and the people that are on our front lines are, you know, they're implementing a policy that a business has brought in, aren't they? And we need to be really mindful of that and be really kind, I guess, as visitors as well, because it's about the protection of the people that work in those businesses as much as it is about ourselves and the others, isn't it? Yeah, okay. Linda, would you like to unmute and come in and ask your question?
Yeah, hi, thanks for the presentations. They were really interesting, ladies. We share office space in a multi-tenancy building, and so I was really just wondering around where the landlord responsibilities stop and the tenant responsibilities start when we aim to become COVID secure as a workspace.
Well, as a landlord, you've got the ultimate responsibility for the building. Mm-hmm. So in a common area, you would be responsible for the signage and social distancing measures and that type of thing, and your risk assessment of that. The tenants are obviously responsible for their areas, but there needs to be a communication between all parties, and they have to share their risk assessments with all parties so that you all know what you're doing and you're all walking the same hymn book.
That's pretty much what I thought. We're actually the tenant in this particular situation, so we've been having communication with the landlord, but we're not quite there yet. Just beginning. But thank you.
We don't have any other specific questions, unless anybody wants to put the hand up. But while you guys are maybe thinking about something, I was just interested, Helen, in have you had a lot of feedback, particularly about things like that Visit Scotland? It's almost like a badge, isn't it, that you're able to kind of put out on social media and kind of tell everybody about how you've put your systems in place. So has there been much feedback about those kind of measures, or people feeling safe because you've limited your numbers?
I think people feel safe because we have limited the numbers, and we've got a record of individuals coming in. And also the way that we have monitored this is people can see exactly how many people are coming in at what stage. So we've got full disclosure of our business. People can see if it's 30 people that are available to come in at 10 o'clock in the morning, or if there's 25 slots left, or if there's 20 slots left. So again, throughout the entire day, they've got that option to go into a time slot that might not have too many people in it. With reference to the We're Good to Go accreditation badge, I would say that any business who is within Visit Scotland does adopt that, because it's a standard where I think as a nation we're wanting to ensure we've got some continuity going out, and tourism is very, very strong for Scotland. I think more people who adopt the same continuity, it delivers that message, which what we're trying to do is encourage obviously staycations within Scotland at this moment in time, but the more that we can get people from other countries from safe countries to visit, then that will be good for our economy. There is that fine paradox of, do we want people coming into our safe environment being Scotland, or do we want to have the economy? But I'll leave that up to Nicola Sturgeon to have that debate. It's a very tough one, but as I was mentioning with the finances, we are monitoring this every single day. We decided to open, and badges such as the We're Good to Go or any other accreditations that we can get along the way will hopefully give confidence to both our staff and our visitors that we are a safe environment. So.
Yeah, and I think it's also important the work you've done in the community, because I know from talking to other chambers, particularly in some of the Highland and rural parts of Scotland, that the communities there are insulated in some ways because they've not had such high precedence in terms of the number of infections there have been, and there is a real worry about the being open and the number of visitors that may come in. So I think that's a really, really important thing, and sometimes we don't often think about that. We just think about our customers and our staff, and maybe aren't necessarily thinking about the people around us too much. So yeah. Nina, has there been much difference between guidance that's come out north and south of the border, and is that likely to trip businesses up, or is that fair? Because you obviously talked about guidance from Public Health England and others.
Yes, it's not so much that it's very different, it's that it's laid out differently, so it's very difficult to find, and obviously it's coming out at different times, isn't it? The general gist of it is all the same, and I'm looking at all different sites to get as much information as I can to gain my knowledge, same as everybody else is. But so it's not that it's necessarily different, it's just that it's laid out differently. So if I look at Scottish legislation, it's laid out different to the way it's laid out in England. It's laid out different in Ireland, and it's difficult to navigate. Which it was one of the reasons why I put links up on my website to try and help people to find the kind of key aspects that they need to do. But as I said, the general the general aspect is it's about social distancing, cleaning, and good personal hygiene, isn't it? Those are the kind of three bucket issues that we need to manage. And I think it's great that the We're Good to Go and other accreditations, and obviously Helen's doing a fantastic job at Glamis, but it's not about having an accreditation, is it? It's about maintaining it all the time, and we are maintaining it all the time, because it's hot. But there's also if you go to a pub and you see all these people trying to manage the situation, they don't know what to do, because it's new and it has to be monitored every single day and recoached and re-educated until it sinks in for the customers as well as the staff and other people that are involved.
And I mean, that's a significant cost to businesses, isn't it? Not just the equipment, but the investment of time and making sure that all of this is as bang up to date as possible. Helen, I know you talked about having to continually, review the financials, and it's a very, very fine line, isn't it? I mean, there's some sectors have obviously had support with PPE and other things, but certainly we've been calling for government to try and do something to support businesses with those extra costs. But I imagine that that's been pretty significant for you, and you're not nearly there yet, because you've not put visitors inside yet. Is there anything that you want to kind of mention about that?
Well, it's interesting because our entire business model is changing. We have developed a virtual tour for the castle, which goes live, I think, Friday or Monday, because the one-way system that we're going to have around the castle will no longer be on the same guided touring system that we had previously. So our entire sort of fiscal strategy has altered within 1 year, and of course to keep jobs is vital. That's the process of what we are doing here, and our team members have been fantastic. They've come up with very many ingenious ways of how we can stimulate business in a safe environment, engage with Scottish hospitality at its best. We're in Angus, so we've got a plethora of fabulous food around us, and so the only thing I can say is watch this space and support our events if you can. I mean, I'm not here to do a sales drive in any capacity. I'm here to explain how the safety measures are. But on the 17th of July, we've got an outdoor cinema that we're doing, and we've had to put, we're working with our collaborative partner, but what we had to do is ensure that we had a seating plan for that outdoor cinema, which we never had before, that we've made sure that the one-way system for cars coming in when they park is got the space in between them as well. And so there's many little different nuances that we're going to be learning from every day of, again, risk assessments with reference to that. And I think, the financial cost of everything that we do to support our staff and to ensure the safety for everybody is vital. We're an organisation which was not fortunate to get any grants, or unfortunate to get any grants, I don't know. But the challenge that we have is we've got a responsibility as well to tourism. We're marked on the calendar for Scottish tourism, and we want to ensure that anybody coming into Scotland has got this opportunity to see Glamis, because it's very beautiful. There's no question about it. But as is Balmoral, as is Edinburgh Castle, as is Stirling Castle, and many other visitor attractions. And I think the more that we can open up visitor attractions, the more people will come back to what is the new normal under the new regime, and not shy away from wanting to come outdoors, and so we can stimulate the economy that way. But we're still far off from it, and we're just one attraction. So I'm hoping that the V&A will be following very soon as well.
Yeah, you have an open door in our team, because a few of the team members' favourite film is Dirty Dancing. so we've already been talking about that on our chats. And I think the other thing I would say is, I think you're doing a lot of good things in kind of talking about what you do, but also, I mean, some of the videos that you've been doing on Facebook and kind of showing off the team have been fab. And I think that, we talked about that this morning with our economic this indicator event, it's, you know, we have to buy local, but actually businesses need to tell their story so that everybody knows what you do and why it's so special and why we should support you. So I had a fab, I don't know how long it was, 3 minutes, listening to your gardener talk about how to safely and cheaply water all your pots and stuff. So it's really, so yeah, please use the chamber channels to share what you do. And you know, if you're open, if you put new measures in place, if you just want to tell people that you've got stuff going on, then please use us, because we're very happy to kind of share all the stories that are going on out there. We've had a couple of people asking about the slides being shared, so Sarah will catch up with you both, and we'll get some links and other things, because we always put out a survey after the event, and we'll share as much as we possibly can. And for those of you that aren't with us live tonight, obviously the recording of this goes up on our YouTube channel, so you can always go back and pause at the appropriate moment and check your notes. But I think that's kind of, no more questions. So I think the people are it's probably time for something to eat if you haven't already done that. And I think time for us to let our speakers go. But thank you so much to Nina and to Helen for their time tonight. Pleasure. And to Sarah for getting us all organised. So thank you to you for taking part and listening, and asking your questions, and we will be in touch. Lots more webinars coming up, so hope to see you on something else soon. Thanks for your time, everybody. Thank you.
Good night.
Bye.
Bye.